Imagine a world where a single empire ruled from the deserts of Egypt to the mountains of Iran. A realm where kings called themselves masters of the world. And the wrath of their armies could erase entire cities in a single day. This was Assyria, the world's first great empire. A civilization so advanced, it built the first professional army, the first postal system, and the first paved roads. And yet, its fall was so complete that its name nearly vanished from history. The Assyrian came down like the wolf on the fold. And his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold, Lord Byron. But long before Assyria's armies marched across continents, it was just a small city by the Tigris River, a trading post named Ashur. From those riverbanks, humanity's first empire would rise, teaching future civilizations how to build, rule, and conquer. At its height, Assyria's dominion stretched from the Nile to the Caspian Sea, and from the Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf. It was the prototype of empire itself, influencing everything that came after, from Persia to Rome. The Assyrians were a Semitic people, descended from ancient tribes who once roamed the green savannas of Arabia. But as the climate changed, their homeland turned into desert, forcing them north in search of fertile land. Some settled in the Levant and Palestine, while others entered Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. These migrants, called Akkadians, mixed with the native Sumerians, blending their languages and gods. From that fusion emerged a new power, the ancestors of the Assyrians. Along the middle Tigris River, three great cities began to rise, Nineveh, Erbil, and Ashur. For centuries, they lived under stronger neighbors, first Sargon of Akkad, then Hammurabi of Babylon. But Ashur held a secret advantage, geography. It sat on the trade route between Babylon and Anatolia, becoming a key link in a vast commercial network. Assyrian merchants carried copper, tin, and lapis lazuli eastward, and returned with silver, timber, and textiles from the west. This flow of wealth transformed Ashur from a rest stop into a thriving city-state. The Assyrians believed their city was divine. Their god, also named Ashur, was not only their protector, he was the city itself. His symbol and the city's name were written the same way, showing that the two were one. The people saw Ashur the god as their true king. Their human ruler was merely his servant, checked by a council of elders and an elected official called the Limu. This early form of civic governance was centuries ahead of its time. In the 18th century BC, chaos swept across the Near East. Trade collapsed, and the once rich city of Ashur fell under Babylonian control. Then came new invaders, the Mitanni, fierce chariot warriors from the north. They made Ashur their vassal, tore down its walls, and filled its council with their own men. But the Assyrians adapted. They learned the art of the chariot, the power of the composite bow, and the craft of lamellar armor. And when Mitanni's power weakened, the Assyrians struck back. King Ashur-bel-nishashur rebuilt the city walls, a bold act of defiance. Later, Ashur-uballit drove the Mitanni envoys out and declared himself king. Assyria was independent once more, and for the first time, saw itself as destined to rule. The old city-state became a kingdom, then a nation, and soon, a mission. They called their land, Mat Ashur, the land of Ashur. Their kings began taking grander titles, kings of the universe, kings of the world. They believed conquest was sacred, that spreading the rule of Ashur brought divine order to a chaotic world. To resist them wasn't just rebellion, it was blasphemy. They called themselves, kings of the world. To resist them was blasphemy. And when their armies marched, cities burned, nations vanished, and empires crumbled into dust. This was the Assyrian war machine, the first military superpower in history. A force so efficient, so ruthless, that even centuries later, their name still whispered fear, Assyria. By the 14th century BC, Assyria was free, but surrounded by rivals. To the south stood Babylon, proud and ancient. To the north and west, the Hittites and the fading Mitanni. To survive, the Assyrians had to master war, and they did. Under Adad-nirari I, they launched campaigns deep into Mesopotamia, seizing cities and tribute. Each victory brought more wealth, and more soldiers. War became not just survival, but destiny. Unlike other kingdoms that fought with part-time militias, Assyria created something new, a standing army. Permanent, organized, and deadly efficient. They divided their forces into infantry, cavalry, archers, and siege engineers. Each unit was trained, disciplined, and equipped by the state. Every man was part of a system that could conquer, or crush, anything in its path. Their commanders kept detailed records, lists of soldiers, routes, supplies, and casualties. It was bureaucracy and brutality fused into one. Assyria revolutionized how wars were fought. Their engineers built battering rams, siege towers, and mobile bridges to cross rivers and walls. They used iron weapons when most armies still fought with bronze. And they turned fear into strategy. When a city resisted, they flayed its leaders alive, impaled rebels on stakes, and carved their punishments into stone walls for all to see. It wasn't madness, it was psychological warfare. To the Assyrians, terror was a weapon of empire. One by one, kings expanded Assyria's reach. Tiglath-Pileser I, 1114–1076 BC, marched from Anatolia to the Mediterranean. He hunted lions, built monuments, and declared himself king of the four corners of the world. His campaigns made Assyria the most feared power on earth. But centuries later, civil wars, invasions, and famine weakened the state. For a time, Assyria vanished into shadow. Until one man brought it roaring back. In the 9th century BC, Ashurnasirpal II rebuilt the empire with fire and blood. He moved the capital to Kalhu, Nimrud, and filled it with art, temples, and palaces. But his glory was built on conquest. He bragged. I built a pillar against the city gate, I flayed the chief men, and I covered the pillar with their skins. This was not cruelty for its own sake, it was a message. Defy Assyria, and this will be your fate. His son Shalmaneser III continued the wars, marching west to confront a new alliance of kings, including Ahab of Israel. For over a century, Assyria crushed rebellion after rebellion, expanding from the Zagros Mountains to the shores of the Mediterranean. The empire ran on order and information. A vast network of roads and couriers connected the cities, the world's first postal system. Messages written on clay tablets traveled hundreds of miles within days. Governors ruled provinces under strict laws, while soldiers enforced taxes and loyalty. Captive nations were deported across the empire, their people resettled to prevent rebellion. Through violence, order was born. By the 8th century BC, under Tiglath-Pileser III, Assyria became unstoppable. He reformed the army, centralized power, and turned vassal states into provinces. He was followed by Sargon II, who built a new capital, Dur-Sharrukin, the fortress of Sargon. Its colossal gates and winged bull statues still stand today, silent witnesses to Assyria's ambition. When Sennacherib came to power, he expanded even further, marching against Babylon and Judah. He laid siege to Jerusalem, an event remembered even in the Bible. The Assyrians claimed victory. The Israelites called it deliverance by divine intervention. But history remembers both, and fears neither side's certainty. Yet beneath the glory, cracks had begun to form. Endless wars drained the treasury. Conquered peoples waited for revenge. And even among Assyrian kings, bloodlines turned against one another. The empire had conquered the world. But soon, the world would rise against it. For centuries, Assyria's armies were unstoppable. Its kings ruled the Near East like gods on earth. But even the mightiest empires bleed from within. And when their enemies struck, there was no saving Nineveh. By the late 7th century BC, cracks in Assyria's empire were impossible to ignore. After Ashurbanipal's reign, constant uprisings, internal disputes, and border rebellions drained the empire. Babylonian vassals broke away. Egypt reclaimed territories. The Lydians refused to recognize Assyrian authority. The once-feared military machine could no longer enforce obedience. Meanwhile, new powers rose. From the east came the Medes, led by King Cyaxares. From the south, Babylon, under Nabopolassar, had regained independence. The stage was set for Assyria's final catastrophe. In 612 BC, a coalition of Medes, Babylonians, and other former vassals marched on Nineveh, the heart of the empire. For 3 months, they besieged the city. Rivers were diverted. Walls crumbled. Palaces burned. King Sin-Sharishkan died in battle, and the city fell. Horrific scenes awaited, survivors were slaughtered, treasures looted, temples destroyed, and Nineveh was reduced to rubble. The remnants of the Assyrian army regrouped at Haran, but resistance was futile. By 610 BC, Babylonian and Median forces crushed the last pockets of Assyrian control. In just a century, the empire that had dominated the Near East vanished. Its cities lay in ruins. Its kings were dead. Its people scattered. Yet, Assyria's legacy endured. The first professional army in history. Siege engines, cavalry tactics, and military engineering that inspired future empires. Administrative innovations, road networks, and postal systems that became the backbone of governance. Cultural and religious influences that shaped Mesopotamia for centuries. The empire may have fallen, but the blueprint it left behind guided Persia, Rome, and countless kingdoms after. The Assyrians were more than conquerors, they were architects of civilization. They reshaped the world with ambition, terror, and ingenuity. And though their cities were lost beneath the sands, their story survives, a reminder that even the greatest empires are mortal, but their innovations can echo forever.